What's up, Magical Misfits? Drew here, and today I want to share a spell. I've actually been wanting to share this spell on my channel since the last time I did it, which was almost a year ago, but I'm finally getting to it. I haven't done anything like this on my channel for a while, so I thought it was about time. FYI, I don't actually call this spell a Proxy Poppet spell in my practice. In my mind, it is a golem spell, but I didn't know if that might somehow be offensive. And that's not what I'm going for, obviously. So for the purposes of this video, putting this out into the ethers, I decided to call it a Proxy Poppet spell. But I don't know what words will come out of my mouth while I'm talking about this, because again, in my own practice, I don't call it that. So that's why I'm explaining. Different words may come out of my mouth as we go through the process. I came up with the spell because an acquaintance of mine came to me. They knew I was a witch, and they were concerned that they perhaps had a curse against them. They were going through a very nasty breakup, divorce, and their ex was friends with a practitioner, and they truly believed that magic was being worked against them. And when they started laying out all the things that had been happening to them very recently, I thought that I could see definitely why they thought that. And I had great compassion for this person, so I decided to try to help. And the first thing we did was a cleansing, and there was a whole thing with that. But when I was sitting and thinking about how to help them, because for me, I didn't want to just go from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. These individuals have a child together, and they're going to be part of each other's lives for a long time, and the child deserves for them to get along as well as humanly possible. I really didn't want to rain down misfortune. I didn't even want to do return to sender. So I sat and I thought about it, and I came up with this spell. And so essentially the gist of the spell is that you make a proxy of the person, and they actually this proxy takes on a part of that life, a part of their being, and becomes an aspect of them, if you will. And anything that is malevolent, harmful, ill-intentioned, not good, instead of going to the person, goes to the golem. So that's kind of the idea behind the spell. I'm not actually going to be working the spell today. Obviously, I'm not in need of this spell, so I'm not going to be working the spell. And I just don't necessarily want to go through all the steps for no reason. So I'm going to walk you through it and explain it to you and tell you my process, and then you can do with that what you will. First, let's talk about the supplies that I use for this spell. The first thing I use is air dry clay. This is the clay that I like to use, Jovi air dry clay. I get it on Amazon. I do actually work with a few different air dry clays, but I make any of my poppets from this. You could even use polymer clay, but I really like a more earthy clay for this. So that's why I go with this clay. The next thing that I use in the spell is a bottle. This is just about the size I like to use, maybe a little bigger. I don't really like to go smaller than this, but you could. I don't have an empty bottle right now, so this is elderberry, but you get the gist. A little bottle. This one is a corked bottle that, again, doesn't matter. Whatever you have on hand will work. It's fine. I use salt in this spell. Just whatever, again, you have on hand will work. I use wormwood in this spell. I forgot to grab. Oish. Okay, I use, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see. There we go. I use lodestone in this spell, and I use my drawing oil in this spell. I have a video up of my drawing oil on my channel. One of my viewers got in touch with me after watching that video and said that they were not able to get their hands on all of the things I use in the oil, but they really liked the oil and inquired as to whether or not we would be willing to put it in the shop, and we have. So that oil is in the shop as well. That and a candle. I use a candle in this spell. So firstly, the salt. I think it's pretty self-explanatory why I might use salt. Salt is just a very basic, powerful correspondence in spell work, and For me, in this spell, it is about, it has to do with grounding for me. Whether that's a property assault or not, that's what it has to do with in my mind, as well as there's an element of purification in there. It's about tethering, binding, as is the wormwood. The wormwood is there purely for binding purposes. So, if you don't have the wormwood, work with wormwood, anything that could be used for binding could be used in its place. I mean, even if you have to just take string, twine, something and tie it around the little Proxy Poppet, then that's what you got to do. It's fine. There are a lot of workarounds. You do not have to do what I do step by step by any means. The lodestone is for drawing in. You could use anything else for that, a magnet, ginger. There are other things that have that property as well. In the drawing oil, it's pretty obvious when we get there what I'm doing with that. And the candle for me is about sealing, though you can take it a step further if you want, which I'll get to. So the first thing that I do is I grab my clay and I make a little poppet. Now, I don't have a little poppet on hand right now. I do have one of my big poppets, so this kind of deal. It's a lot more detailed than I would make. The poppet I make for the spell is not detailed at all, but it has a little head and a little body that comes down. I do give it legs and arms, and these little arms you can see kind of stick off. They don't stick off on the other the other poppet. You don't have to do that. It can just be sort of like, how goddess statues often are very sort of abstract, and it's just this body, this little sort of oval, oblong kind of body. You could totally do that. I just like it to I want it to resemble the human figure, basically. The thing that's most important to me when forming my poppet is to keep checking that it's going to fit inside this bottle. It's going to be thin enough to go into the lid of whatever bottle I'm using, and it's not going to be taller than where the top, whether it's a cork that slides in or a screw top, whatever, that it's not going to stick up out of the top, that it will be completely enclosed inside the bottle. I didn't mention this, but I like to have some parchment, a scrap of paper, whatever, for this spell. And I'd like to have, if possible, the individual that this spell is being worked for write their own name on the paper. If not, obviously I can do it for them, like if they're in another state or something, but if they can physically write their name for me, that's what I want. And if I could get saliva, blood, hair, something with their DNA, I would also really appreciate that for this spell. Again, it's not required, but I like it. My ultimate goal here is to really tie the golem to the person that it's the proxy for. I should have mentioned. So I have the scrap of paper with the name, roll it up really small in a little scroll-like shape, just round, rolled it up, and stick it inside. Mold the golem, the proxy, around that parchment with the name, and hopefully DNA if possible from the person, so that it is contained within this little golem. I never give them faces or anything. Again, it's just very basic humanoid clay shape that fits inside of the vessel that I'm going to be storing it in. Once my little golem is finished, I hold it in my hands and I talk to it. I program it. First, I give it its name. So we're going to pretend the name of the person we're working for is TT. Because hopefully nobody has that even as their nickname. And so you are TT. From this day forth, you are a proxy for TT. You will absorb any negative intention, action, deed, thought, feeling, any malevolence, anything that is harmful and not in TT's best interest will be taken into you instead of TT. So now the clay TT will be the guardian of the TT of the flesh. You are now an aspect of TT. You word it however you want to word it, but basically your job is to collect and hold any ill will, any baneful magic, any mal intention, whatever it is that could be harmful to the flesh and blood TT will now be taken in by you, the clay TT. That is your job. That is your function. That is who you are. And then obviously the clay needs like 24 hours to fully cure, and it depends on the size of the poppet really, but a small one like I'm talking about, 24 hours, maybe less. And you could do that in sacred space. You could, let it dry out on your altar, or if you had like a special charging station, a cloche, something like that, charge there. It could charge while it's curing, while it's drying, and then come back to the little poppet the next day. And that's when we would move forward with the bottle. First, I would add a layer of salt. Then I would take my lodestone and put that in. And the next thing I would do would be to anoint the golem with the drawing oil. Now you could pick a different oil. It wouldn't have to be a drawing oil. You could pick an oil that would cleanse and neutralize, or again, you don't have to work the spell exactly the way that I do. After anointing the little golem, I would put that in the bottle, swish it around, do whatever I do to make sure everything fits good. And then I would add wormwood in. And this is up to you. You could go ahead and light the candle before you started doing all of this. Anoint the candle with an oil if you choose. And then when you seal the bottle, again, stating the intention of what is happening with this bottle. So I've already given the Proxy Poppet a job, but now, stating that this will be the vessel that contains TT, the golem, and we want to make sure that anything that comes into TT stays in this bottle, stays in TT, stays here, and isn't dispersed elsewhere. And then take candle wax. You wouldn't even have to use a candle if you didn't want to. You could use like sealing wax kits, the sealing wax, you could use that. Personally, I might use orange for this because I associate orange with drawing magic, but you could also, obviously, black and white would be two that quickly come to mind. Gray is a good one. Any color that you felt enhanced whatever it was you were trying to do for whatever reason. To seal the bottle, I like to wax seal my spell bottles. I personally have had these little golem bottles in my house for long periods of time and not experienced anything unpleasant as a result. But I do think it's a good idea to take it a step further and to take the bottle out and bury it into the earth. And there are a couple things you could do with that too. You could take a larger little jar and put something like swamp water in it that's sort of stagnant. Holds water or pond water, or any kind of water that comes from a source that isn't running and flowing and moving. And put the Proxy Poppet, I really have a hard time, Proxy Poppet spell bottle into that and seal that and bury that into the earth. Or you could just bury it directly into the earth, setting the intention that after these malevolent, harmful, baneful energies, intentions, actions, whatever, are drawn to this version of TT, that they be transmuted by the earth and turned into something beautiful, and that is no longer malevolent toward anyone, including TT. But I really do feel like the way that I personally work the spell, those energies stay in that golem and in that bottle, and I've not experienced any sort of leakage, if you will, any sort of ill effects in the immediate environment of that bottle. So it is self-contained, but ultimately I think it's a good idea to take that out and to give it to the earth. I'm sorry this wasn't one of those spells where I work it with you, but I just really didn't feel the need to work it at this time. And I mean, hopefully I won't. It's not a spell you do because everything's going good, right? It's a spell you do because things are not going well. But I have found it to be an effective spell, and I do obviously want to share that kind of thing with my viewers. So hopefully you can get something out of that. Inspiration for a completely different spell, possibly, who knows? Whatever you do with it is what you do with it. But that is my contribution for this video. I don't think I forgot anything. Hopefully I didn't. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, much love and gratitude.